Hey guys, take one of his story made my story. Um, we'll see how this goes. Figured I'd sit in one of the most comfortable places that I have, and that would be in my garage with my toys, my motorcycles and stuff like that. You'll find a very common theme that motorcycles have played an important part of my life. Um, I grew up in a motorcycle dealership, had a decent family. I mean, we all have our own source of dysfunction. My dad was an alcoholic up until when I was in the eighth grade. He got into recovery at that point in time. My mother is a saint. She's the one that held us all together even when my dad tried to tear us apart. So hats off to Valerie. She's a solid rock for our family, and we wouldn't be here without her. Myself, I grew up hanging out at motorcycle shops every day. That's where I grew up. My family had a dealership when I was a boy. I was about 3, 4 years old when we bought our dealership, and that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be around my dad. I wanted to be around the motorcycle shop, and that's where I spent every moment that I could and was allowed to be there. I was there. That was a good thing, but it was also a not so good thing. The motorcycle industry is a little bit behind the curve when it comes to political correctness, language, objectifying women. All those kinds of things are all things that I grew up around, and that was just part of growing up. It was what I thought was normal. Into high school, struggled in school. We moved a few times when I was younger. Struggled in school, trying to fit in somewhere. Didn't really feel like I had a true group of friends. Had some people that I hung out with, different groups that I hung out with. I played hockey in youth hockey, and then I played my senior year of high school. I call that my sympathy letter. I didn't make the team until I was a senior, and made fourth string. And for some reason, seniors that played hockey automatically lettered in that sport. In retrospect, it was kind of funny. Really didn't care. At that point in time in high school, I hung out with all sorts of different people, not necessarily the good kind of people. Hung out with people that used drugs. Hung out with people that drank alcohol. I ended up being kind of a partier in high school because it was the only place that I really felt like people gave me any attention at all. So I played that game, even though my dad was in recovery, and he's been sober for longer than 50% of his life at this point. But even though my dad was in recovery and did talks at high school about not using drugs and alcohol, I was pretty much focused on going down that path, and I wasn't gonna let anybody defer me from where I wanted to go. And sometime in high school during confirmation, grew up Lutheran. During part of that time, we had what I would consider similar to what we have at the Waters Now worship team come in and play some more upbeat music and a little bit more rockish for that time. This was in the 80s, early 80s, and don't remember the band, but I remember that they made an impact on me. That was something that I thought was pretty cool. Played band in high school, never really played any stringed instruments. I played the French horn from like 5th grade through sophomore in high school and gave up on that. So through all of that stuff, I had plenty of bad influences in my life, and really the only good influences that I had in my life were my grandmother, may she rest in peace, another saint in our family, and my mom, who was just a solid rock, keeping us together, like I'd said. Went into vocational school, didn't really want to go to college, didn't have any desire to go to college. I knew I wanted to be in the motorcycle dealership. I knew I wanted to run the motorcycle shop at some point in time. So I had absolutely no desire to go to college. Didn't go to college. I went to vocational school for a semester, or for a year and a half. Got a motorcycle mechanics degree, and started working at my dad's dealership when I was a kid. It was from the time I was old enough to hold a rag and some cleaning solution. I was polishing bikes on the showroom floor. Grew up doing that, working in the parts room, technician, was a service advisor, did all these different things in the dealership. And after I got out of vocational school, where I we bought the dealership up in St. Cloud, and I moved up there and ran that for 19 years. During that time, I was still using. I wasn't a real heavy user. I was a pot smoker, and spent a lot of, that was a lot of my casual time, and ended up using it more often than not just to be normal. So it was just part of who I was. It was just what I did. About 15 years ago now, 16 years ago now, actually it's probably a little more than that, I decided that I had enough of that, and started going to AA meetings and 12-step meetings, and was able to curb my alcohol use, which wasn't really out of hand. But whenever I would go out drinking, I would always find somebody that had some pot to smoke. So I got rid of that in my life. Kind of did it on my own. I didn't really go to treatment, and I kind of half-assed, for lack of a better term, did the 12 steps. So I really don't feel that there was a huge, real addiction, like a manifestation of the physical kind anyway. I definitely have an addictive personality. I've definitely had my struggles with objectifying women, pornography, and so on. After getting sober and cleaning up my life a little bit, I had been through a couple of marriages, and kind of the place where God really made an impact in my life was at the dealership in St. Cloud. I had a gentleman that worked for me who was the head of a motorcycle club called the Bond Slaves, which is a outreach ministry to hardcore motorcycle groups. So these guys would go to hardcore events where the Outlaws, the Hells Angels, and those kinds of people would be hanging out, and they minister to those groups. And I hired him. He worked for me for a while. He was a service advisor. He was at the parts counter. Just a really, really super guy. His name was, he went by Mac Stone. And he really, very charismatic guy. He was a lot like my dad, but he was very charismatic. He was a great speaker. And I knew that he was a pastor at a church in Princeton. And I knew that he had been involved in ministry and everything else. And all the time that he worked for me, I kept saying to myself that I got to get over and see Mac preach. I got to go over and see Mac preach. And it never happened. I kept saying it. My second wife wasn't really all that interested in going over there. And I just never took the time to go over there and do that. So he ended up moving on. He decided that it was time for him to move on from working at the dealership. So we just, parted ways peacefully. And I didn't think anything of it, because he was a fairly decent employee, and that's kind of what I expected. I've had many employees, come and go over the years. I guess not as many as you would think, but to have a peaceful parting was not all that abnormal for me. Fast forward about 6-8 months, I finally get a chance to go see Mac preach. I finally said, you know what, I'm going to go watch him preach. They did church on Sunday evenings. So I ran over there, and I walked in the front door, and this was the first time I'd ever really seen firsthand, as it happened, God's hand moving. Walked through the door, and Mac's eyes lit up. I mean, it was probably the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life out of a person of this magnitude, kind of a hardcore biker looking dude, and his eyes lit up. It was just an overwhelming joy that he had on his face. And he ran over to me, and he gave me a great big hug, and he said, I couldn't figure it out. I just couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, what? What couldn't you figure out, Mac? He said, and this is Mac talking back then. He's like, all the years I've worked, all the different places I've worked, I have never been able to leave someplace with a peaceful party. It just never happened. There were always burned bridges. He always had hurt feelings, either towards the business that he was working for, or them towards him, or whatever. It was just never did he have a peaceful party. And he said, I couldn't figure out why. I just could not figure out why. He kept expressing that he couldn't figure out why. And then he looked at me straight in the eye, and he said, until you walk through the door. that's when he said, because I'm supposed to minister to you. Me not being a born-again Christian, I didn't know how to react to that. I had no idea. I never had anybody speak something like that to me. I didn't really think a whole lot about it at the time. I spent a little bit of time, hanging out with him and talking with him. I stayed for church that evening, a little storefront church in downtown Princeton called Doulos. And I really enjoyed the music. They were much more of a bluesy, rock and roll kind of a music. I enjoyed that. I could just feel God's presence in that place. And a couple of weeks go by, I go back a couple more times, and I'm kind of getting a little bit more plugged in. I'm feeling a little bit more connected. And Mac asked for anybody to come up front that wanted prayer. And I bolted out of my seat. And I don't even know how I did it. I don't know. I didn't make a conscious decision. God just jerked me out of my seat and brought me up front. And I stood up there, and Mac prayed over me. I gave my heart to the Lord. And I've been in places where I've seen people get knocked on their butt by the Holy Spirit. I've seen people get literally laid out, like passed out. But that's not what happened to me. When I stood there, Mac was a good 6-8 inches taller than me. And the whole time that Mac is praying over me, I can feel my spirit and my body lifting off the ground. I don't know if I physically left the ground or not, because I was completely tuned into God at the time. And I felt like I was as tall as Mac, like we were on an equal playing field as far as height goes. And it was like God was holding me and lifting me up. It was absolutely, without a doubt, the most real and the most surreal thing I have ever experienced. Like I said, I gave my life to the Lord that night. I really got plugged in. I really wanted to be there. I wanted to feel connected with that experience. I didn't want to let it go. And continued to go to Doulos Ministry Church and tried to help out. I was there early. I was listening to the worship practice because the music was just so powerful. It just spoke to my heart. I spent time, just being there. Mac, shortly after I started going there, Mac said, come here. I know you like music. You need to sit right here. Here's the best acoustical spot in the building. And I think it was partially because it was hard to escape from that certain location, so I couldn't leave. So I spent that time there early every week, listening to the music, being involved, and the church started to go through some stuff, and the worship leaders at that time had left. They had other callings or something else going on. I don't even remember what at that time. The worship team started to dwindle, and I was continuing to go, and I kind of felt this tug at my heart that I needed to be involved with the worship team somehow. I hadn't played the French horn since high school. Don't know how to play any musical instrument. Okay, this is 10 years ago. Don't know how to play any musical instrument. I might be able to make a half a scale on the French horn or the trumpet because the fingers are close to the same. And but I could sing. Okay, I was never really a great singer. Never had any training. Did a little bit of choir in school, but so I volunteered to help out on the worship team and started singing and helping out the worship team on that. The church continued to go through some struggles and dwindle and stuff like that, and the guy who was playing bass had been driving down from Brainerd, so he was driving an hour and 15 minutes just to go to church and play. And I felt God tug at my heart again. He said, maybe you should try it. Maybe you should play bass. Maybe you should. And I thought, you know what? I've always had a fascination with bass guitar, and so I decided I went and bought myself a nice little cheap Ibanez bass guitar. I still have it. It's my red one, and I picked it up. I took some online lessons, and I learned some very basic stuff. My joke, and Nate Long can attest to this, is bass is pretty simple. I got 4 fingers. It's got 4 strings. I got 4 functioning brain cells yet, so I can figure it out. Anyway, I started playing, got enough to where at least I could play just the basic whole notes and quarter notes and stuff, and be able to help support the worship team. And started playing with the worship team. And during that time of singing and during the time of playing worship at Doulos, one of the things really struck me that really kind of poured back into me is that when I'm up playing and worshiping God, whether it's with the congregation sitting in the seats or if I am up on stage, when I take a moment to stop singing and listen to the people that are singing all around me, and I know that there's people out in an audience or a congregation or whatever that think they can't sing. God gave you that voice, lift it up, because when I hear everybody singing in a large group like that, praising the Lord, it makes the most glorious harmony that I have ever heard in my life. There's nothing like it. I can't describe it. It's one of those very real but very surreal things that, as other worship people might be able to attest to as well, that it is just incredible to hear everyone worshiping the Lord, and being able to help bring people together and to help lead with that is one of the biggest blessings that I have. And to be brutally honest, if I hadn't got saved, there's absolutely no way that I would ever be able to play an instrument. There's just no way. He is the one who gave me that talent, and he poured that into me, and I'm very blessed to give that back. So, all the worship, everything else, I've got myself, after 2 failed marriages, I've got myself saved. Actually, back up here a little bit. Early on, when I got saved, my second marriage was going in a spiral downward fast. And probably significantly, no, not probably, significantly, most of that was my own fault. Which is neither here nor there. It's gone, it's past, nothing I can do about that. So through that, I get saved. She decides that even though I'm saved and she says she's saved, we can't seem to come to terms and move in the right direction. It's neither here nor there. So relationship falls apart. We're absolutely not getting back together. There's nothing happening there. Through that, I start going to during that whole time, I started going to a counselor's office in Colorado, of all places. I tried people around here, found a specialist that was more focused on relational stuff, and went out there and started seeing this guy with my ex-wife at the time, and started seeing him. Through that process, got introduced to a place called Pathways, which was a Dr. Phil experiential lifestyle management seminar series in Dallas, Texas, that I ended up going to. Really got poured into there, got very connected there, really hammered through some stuff in my life, and got things moving in the right direction, and kind of through this whole era of getting saved and getting my life in order and learning how to deal with the past and getting it behind me and everything else is when the bass playing started coming around, and I started getting my life back in order. Through that same time, I was really religious about praying every night. So as I'm praying, I got saved, and it was about a month. It was one night I was on my knees praying, and a friend of mine from high school that I knew, whose mother and my mother went to church together, started coming to my mind while I was praying. I had no idea why. Hadn't seen her in years, and I just started praying for her. I had no idea what was going on. Like I said, no idea where she was living. I had seen her like 2 or 3 times in 10 or 15 years. So literally, I was a little stumped as to why she was coming into my mind while I was praying. So I prayed for her. After about a week, every night, week and a half, 2 weeks. Okay, now I'm starting to get concerned. I don't know what's going on with her. I haven't seen her in years. Why is all of a sudden Patty coming to my brain every night when I am praying and trying to figure out what's going on and trying to keep myself connected to God and trying to get that desire to be in the Word and get, I'm really working on all these things. And every night, every time I was praying, she would come to mind. So I sent my mom an email and I said, Mom, will you please send an email to Patty through Mary or whoever and just let her know that I've been praying for her. I have no idea what she's got going on, but she's been coming to mind in my prayers every night. And I just want her to know that I'm praying for her. I don't know what's going on. And she forwarded that on. Her mom, Mary, forwarded it on to Patty, who we ended up connecting via email and chatting back and forth a little bit. Come to find out that she was in a really, really tough spot. Her now ex-husband had another affair and was moving in the wrong direction and wasn't being connected to the family and wasn't really supporting the family, and he was one of these people that was in and out of their lives all the time. Jimmy and Cindy and Patty. So we connected, started talking again. Now keep in mind, she's 2 years older than me, which I know she probably wouldn't want me to put that out there public, but the reason that that's important to this story is that she was this hot senior high school cheerleader, and I was a dorky misfit sophomore, and I had a huge crush on her in like 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade. And at that point in time, and I wish I had some pictures to show you how much of a dork how much of a dork and outcast I really looked like in high school. But there is no way that the hot cheerleader was going to have anything to do with me at that point in time. And this is how God moves over the long term, and how His timing and everything is really, really good. So she was the really hot one. We're getting reconnected now. 25 years have passed in between. Okay. Patty is the most wonderful, soft-hearted, kindest, most generous, loving people I've ever met in my life. And she is super funny and fun to be around and everything else. And if Patty and I would have connected while we were in high school, with the track record that I have, the things that I've done, the past that I have, I would have destroyed her. There's absolutely no way she would have emotionally survived any type of relationship with me at that point in time. So God's grace is good, and His guidance is best, and His timing is perfect. And even though I would have loved to have not been through a couple of failed marriages and not had all the struggles that I have, it wouldn't make me the person that I am today, and it wouldn't make me the husband that I am today, and it wouldn't bring me the blessings that I have today. I have a wonderful 7-year-old granddaughter. I have a 27-year-old son who's really moving in the right direction and got things going on. And my stepson Jim has been plugged into the waters since we moved over here, which is a whole other story in and of itself, which I'll get to in a second. I mean, it's only 25 minutes so far. Might as well, right? So I got through all of that stuff, got blessings, we're plugged into the church, moving on, and just God is so great. And I cannot describe all of the different blessings that have happened through my life and watching God's hand move. And I just hope that this helps somebody. So, before I get too far, making it to the Waters Church, so as I said, I was playing in the worship team and had found some blessings there, and the church was falling apart, kind of, sort of, and I was talking with one of my employees, and she said that the Waters had just had their bass player move away. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of interesting. I sent Nate an email. We ended up connecting. I went over and played one morning while we were still at Mulligan's, and got a chance to play with Kip, who was a drummer at the time, and Peggy, and I think Kip was there the first time, and Craig and Nate, and got done with the rehearsal. It was just there for rehearsal to see, if it was going to be a good fit, or if it, I'd be okay to play with the guys or whatever. And pretty sure it was Kip. I was packing up my stuff at the end of rehearsal, and he says, "Where are you doing? Where are you going?" I said, "I was just here for rehearsal. I had, this is my first time over here. I was expecting that I was done." And Nate looked at me and said, "Why don't you stay and play?" And got hooked up with the team and really felt connected, and got to hear Doug and Peggy tell a little bit of information about the church. And then Doug was preaching, and went to the entry with Patty. We had gotten into a relationship and had gotten married just before we had gotten over to the Waters Church, and really, really fell in love with the people and the ministry and the direction that everything is going, and just really love it here, and are so blessed to be part of this. So I'm sure this is going to be really, really long, and I don't know if anybody at the Waters is going to be able to use it, but I hope that it touches somebody's heart. And feel free to give me a call or stop by and bug me after church, during church, whatever. I just am so very, very grateful and so very blessed that God loves me, and He loves all of us. And He will show you if you trust in Him and listen to Him and ask. Have a blessed day.